Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode about the movies with William Fletcher. As per usual, I am your host, William Fletcher, and this week, once again, as I mentioned in last week, I am joined once again by Barney.
Hello, everyone.
Yes, and this is the continuation of our three-parter series on the career of Martin McDonagh. And in
We're at
so
the
yeah,
middle point now.
Yeah. And so when we talked about In Bruges, we were very positive on it.
Yeah,
You
definitely.
you extreme you especially so.
Big time.
And so yeah, so this
Will
week
that be reflected in this episode? Well,
let's see. And this week we'll be covering Seven Psychopaths, which was the next film that he did.
I
Uh,
think generally regarded to be the middle child,
yeah,
forgotten
the
Donna film.
weakest one, the less good, not
I mean,
bad
yeah,
necessarily, but definitely the weakest of the three. Yeah.
yeah. I do have to admit, I love this film. One of
Okay.
the really
Being
underrated films of all time. But
mm,
yeah, no, I think it is the
the
weak point
weakest.
in his career, but
Yeah.
it isn't a weak point.
Yeah. But it's like a weak point in that like just because it's his weakest film doesn't mean it's bad. It's just the
Exactly.
others are better. Just so much
Yeah.
better, but not like
Ooh, I wouldn't
is
say
it
so much better, but
well
yes,
well
there's definitely a
sig-
slight.
yeah, they are
I have more issues with this film than I do
do
in
with his
Bruges.
other two films.
But we'll get onto Three Billboards when we get there.
Yeah.
I definitely have a few
Mm,
goals.
yeah.
But,
So yeah, to sort of just put my cards on the table, I definitely prefer In Bruges. I think that is the better of the two films.
yeah, yeah, no, I do definitely agree with that. But
And I think pretty much everyone I know who has seen these films agrees with that they think in Bruges.
um, yeah, that's generally what I can't think of anybody that I know that prefer.
Mm-hmm. And so, do let's just get into it. So, I guess sort of for a basic premise, it's about a guy wanting to write a screenplay called Seven Psychopaths. Is basically like the log line essentially.
Yeah,
You
a
could
guy
say.
wants to write a screenplay called Seven Psychopaths, and he gets mixed up in wacky adventure with his best friend, who is a dog kidnapper.
Yes,
As
that's
bizarre as that sounds.
yeah. And I will say that I do quite like this film though. I thought it was good, but it definitely was weaker in comparison to In Bruges.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so the open. So I guess we'll just sort of start from the beginning and just sort of make our way through it. So we've got an opening sort of dialogue scene between these two characters, these sort of nameless characters who are not.
They have names. They're like Tommy, and
Mm,
they're just hitmen.
yeah, yeah, they are inconsequential basically to the
Yeah,
story. They're not.
don't affect it.
Yeah, they're not important, massively so. And so they're just
Um,
talking about
they're getting shot in the eye.
about getting shot in the eye and the skill or lack thereof it
Yeah,
requires to hit that shot.
it really occurred to me. That this film feels like Martin McDonagh's really channeling Tarantino, particularly in this opening.
Oh, and just what like
Um,
how like the characters
how
talk and
they're talking, yeah, violence
mm-hmm.
films. They
Oh
mentioned The Godfather at some point.
yeah, this film is much more violent than In Bruges. Like this is In
Oh
Bruges had
yeah,
like
this. I mean,
moments of violence and had some like sort of big stuff, but this is much more
this film's very
violent.
much kind of, I think, talking about violence.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of have to show violence.
Yeah, and so they're just talking about this, and then they both get shot in the head, and
By another masked killer. Ooh.
a man in a red mask, psychopath one, as I believe.
The Jacko Diamond,
Yeah,
Psychopath 1. Just before we pass this opening scene, there's a line that I really like, and
Mm-hmm.
something like um, yeah, look at me, I've got the chick killing shakes.
Alright.
Which is one that I will probably never be able to use in my life, but you know, if there's some situation I'm in that I get to use that line, then I
Mm,
will take it.
yeah. I guess that's with some lines. If you get an opportunity to use it, you might as well, because that
Take
might be
it.
the
Yeah.
only time you can ever use it in in that
Exactly. Exactly.
And so
Um,
then we are
then it
introduced to Colin Farrell and
party.
Marty and Sam Rockwell as well.
Yep.
Relatively
It's
early on, the
Billy Bickle.
Billy, yeah, who I believe you mentioned off recording, was one of like your favorite characters, just sort of in film.
Yeah. Generally, Billy Bickle is one of my real favorite film characters, and I'll look to
Mm.
getting into that
Is
as we go
there
on.
Yeah, is there a particular reason why, or do you want to get into that later as we sort of
I think we need to go into that as we talk about.
yeah? And so they sort of
We're also
introduce.
introduced to Aya, girlfriend.
Oh yeah,
Aya. Aya.
yeah, Myra, yeah, and
Rockwell's quality Aussie accent.
yeah, I like how sort of around this point he doesn't know if she's from New Zealand or from Australia, even though there's like a clear difference. Well, to me anyway. Maybe it's because
Yeah,
I
to
am
you and me
Australian.
as Australians,
It's
we
a
know
lot
the
easier
difference.
to sort of be like, oh well, she's very clearly Australian. Like that's not what a New Zealand person sounds like.
She says like she says she says the word it,
Yeah,
it rather than but.
yeah,
But
and it's
to an American such as
mhm. And she is actually Australian. I did look at the
yeah,
cast as like,
Abby Cornish is Australian.
and so yeah, so Marty is introduced. He's writing the screenplay called Seven Psychopaths, and he's um
He's got this great title, but he can't really progress much further
yeah,
than that.
and I think
He's got a few ideas.
yeah, and it's also around this point, like very early on. I wrote down. I made a note of one of my favorite lines.
Yeah.
So Billy is talking about this fight he was in with
Oh
like
yeah.
some guy, and then he says, I think he says something like, "I don't." I didn't punch his nose. His nose was just in the middle of where I was punching, or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, that's
It's
it.
like, it's like, yeah, that's sort of like a thing I would use. I'd be like, well, I didn't actually do this. It just happened while I was doing this other
It's
thing.
like that, you push somebody off a cliff. Hey, I didn't kill gravity.
Yeah, exactly. It's that kind of thing. But um, and very early on, this very much establishes them as characters, sort of who they are, their personalities, and
And Marty's very kind of, I guess, nervous. I guess is the way. He's a lot more stressed out than
yeah,
who just seems a lot more chilled out
he's
with
just sort of
the world
carefree
at
and just sort of
large.
just doing things. He's just sort of living his life and doing what he
Yeah.
wants to do.
I guess it's also around this point that we're introduced Hans,
Ah,
Christopher
yes, to
Walken,
Hans. Um,
is Billy's his partner. I'm in there kidnapping.
mhm, yeah, and yeah, so yeah, very early on we are introduced to the characters who
Few
are
characters.
who are sort of
Our main three, I guess.
yeah, the main ones, and again it's sort of very much perfect early establishing of characters and what they mean to the story, and and I think
Yeah,
that's
because I think he sets up characters really well.
yeah, I think that's something that yeah, I think we might have mentioned in the episode on In Bruges, where like the opening monologue from Colin Farrell sort of very much establishes the character and sort of establishes these people, and or well, the main character.
He really kind of dives straight in and kind of lets you know what's what pretty much.
Yeah. I made a note at this point very early on that there's a lot of reference to like Christianity, and I guess
Oh
sort of
yeah,
notes that
because Hans is he's a Christian
yeah,
all time.
Yeah.
Um, so he has a wife,
Mm. Yeah.
Ira.
Myra.
He's
Yeah.
got cancer,
Who's got cancer. Yeah. Uh,
and so that's why they're kidnapping dogs so they can turn them
pay.
to their owners
Yeah.
and
To
get the reward money
reward.
to pay for treatment.
But they, one of the dogs they kidnap is
Belongs to a psycho, as they put it.
is one of the seven psychopaths, as it were. Woody Harrelson, or Charlie, as his character is
um,
called.
that was the Woody Harrelson role in this was originally going to be Rourke, I believe.
Mickey Rourke.
Um,
Goodness.
yeah.
Mm.
Um, and he had a fallout with Martin McDonagh. He left the project, and then
Oh, is there any
McDonagh
sort
brought
of
Woody Harrelson in.
uh, is there
I don't
any
know anything about it. All I know is like Martin McDonagh, afterwards, Martin McDonagh just called him a jerk off. We know.
That's such like a British thing to say about someone.
That's the way he describes it. But
Right.
yeah,
Okay.
specifically, I'm not sure what it was.
Right. Okay. Uh, mm, okay. Well, because Mickey Rourke, he's very much got sort of the look that Woody
Yeah, yeah.
Harrelson doesn't. Although I do think Woody Harrelson works in this. I don't think he's bad, and there's some really great comedic bits that we'll get to later on with his character,
I think I would prefer
Mickey Rourke.
Harrison. No, with Woody Harrison,
Oh,
right?
with Woody Harrelson, with
Rock.
Mickey Rourke, yeah.
Yeah. I
Mm.
mean, that's just generally where I stand on them as actors. I think.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Sorry, I think I prefer Harrison.
Woody Harrelson as an actor than Mickey
Can't
Rourke.
speak today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm more of a guy.
Mm. And so, yeah, and I sort of a general point. This film is a lot more introspective than in Bruges. This is sort of looking at religion and sort of the sort of heaven and hell sort of dilemma, and who goes to hell and who goes to heaven and such. And in Bruges doesn't really touch on that as a topic. It's more of a
No, I think In Bruges definitely does touch on that.
well, it's not as
This I think is definitely it from say a Christian,
mm,
but that's just a little bit of it. I don't think they mentioned the afterlife,
yeah,
but I don't think they really get into who goes to heaven.
yeah. They don't in Bruges. Yeah, they don't. That's not as big of a part. It's just sort of like a scene. Whereas I felt like this was a lot more sort of looking at that and sort of, I guess, breaking it down and the introspection. I
I
mean, that
never
was just
really
sort of
got that from this, but yeah,
okay.
no, I
That
can see how
was
you came to that
that was
conclusion.
sort of something I sort of picked up while watching this because of Marty. Because he's writing the script and he has the Quaker, who is one of the
Yeah,
psychopaths who,
but these ideas that he's got down so far.
yeah, who's essentially this guy whose daughter was killed by this man, and then he sort of tormented this guy forever.
Pursued him throughout his life and
Yeah,
drove him to
and
suicide
leads him
ultimately.
to suicide because that would lead him to hell, and then he commits suicide himself to go to hell with him to continue tormenting him. Which what's one of my favorite images is of him of the Quaker smoking while like slitting his throat, and it's just the blood just like coming down his neck. It's just like
Yeah.
really great imagery.
I think this film really nails like film violence,
Yeah.
the
It,
way it's portrayed. This scene, particularly later on,
mm, yeah.
is great
It's
stuff.
not like over like polished or like trying to look, you
Real,
know.
you know.
It's just sort of, and it's not like massively. I didn't find it to be like overabundant. I sort of felt it was used when necessary. It wasn't just
It's not just like let's just have some violence for the sake of
yeah.
violence.
It's kind of like sort of a thing Tarantino can get accused of times of like he uses violence too much, and I think occasionally that can be a criticism against him, but most of the time it's sort of justified in most cases. And I think this is very much sort of a similar thing of it's not really as often as it could be.
Oh, this film could be incredibly violent if Martin McDonagh chose to do that, but I think he does kind of
Yeah, I
rein it
think
a
he
bit.
sort of understands that like there's like a line, that you don't like. He knows
He's
it's too
very
much.
interested in his he's very interested in his characters, so I think he wouldn't
Mm,
really want to distract from that.
yeah, and so
Um,
so that was one of the first psychopaths. Well, one of the is the Quaker, and that Marty's writing about. And is it after this scene, or is it like just before where we're introduced to Woody Harrelson's character?
I think it's a little bit after.
Mm. Uh,
Oh yeah, and there's also a bit where Billy gives Marty the idea about the Jack and Diamond
yeah,
guy that
he
he's
mentions that. Uh,
kills only mid to high ranking of
mm,
the Yakuza, whatever.
yeah. Uh, and so
I guess we can just kind of skim over some of the next
mm,
little bit. So yeah, we're introduced to Woody Harrelson,
and in a
evidence of him being a bit unhinged.
yeah, in what room? What like kind of place are they in? I couldn't really.
I'm not sure.
They're in this sort of room with the person who is meant to be looking after his dog, right? And who's
He's
lost
like
the dog.
pieces of Reese.
Yeah, and it's at this point that one of the guys in the background, I was like, I know
I was
that
going to
guy.
say, do you recognize one of
It's Kevin Corrigan, who was Professor Professorson from Community.
them? Community? Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, that really looks like him. And then I looked him up and was like, oh, it is him. It
It's
actually is him.
him.
And I was like,
I
man,
thought that when I watched it.
I was like, well, he's one of my favorite like minor characters in Community. And I was like, and I thought he would be like sort of that. I mean, because he is essentially that another sort of minor character in this. He's not really in it that much.
Yeah.
He's just sort of like a, I guess, disposable henchman that you sort of need to have, because the big bosses always need some henchmen around them. Um,
Um. So then Marty picks up on Billy's couch,
yeah,
called his girlfriend a bitch.
yeah, because that's
So, oh yeah, well, we've not mentioned Marty has a bit of a drinking problem.
well,
He
no,
doesn't.
he doesn't have a drinking problem. He just likes drinking.
Just likes drinking. That's true.
I
That's
don't
true.
have
Of
a drinking
course.
problem. I just like drinking. It's again, it's that sort of same thing of like, it's like, well, I'm not actually, it's that sort of thing. As we mentioned,
It's
like,
trying to justify it to yourself, but it doesn't really hold
it
up.
doesn't, yeah, because it's like, well, it's you just said the same thing essentially, but
So
when
you just kind of
you just
you're
sort
kind
of
of
change the
explaining
words,
what an alcoholic is.
yeah, you just swap some words around and just like you just you just
Right.
remove the word problem and like that was it. Um, so at this point, I made a note of the psychopaths we've met. So we've met the Jack of Diamonds, the Quaker, and Woody Harrelson.
Charlie Costello.
Yeah, and those are the three we've met at this point, right? Yeah. Um, and so
Where the fourth one shows up, I guess we'll.
yeah, and this thing has, as we mentioned in Bruges, how the characters aren't like they're not race well they are racist, but they don't hate other races. They're just like sort of ignorant.
Just kind of saying things. Yeah, ignorant.
And that's sort of the thing of like again, it's the same
French
thing.
got cheese, the Spanish got bullfighting, the
Yeah.
Irish got alcoholism.
Yeah, that's exactly
Americans
what it
got
is.
tolerance.
It's not a hate necessarily for
Not using it to hate on somebody because of their culture. They're just saying that this is a thing that
yeah,
of this
but
country's.
just being racist, but not not saying it because they actually hate them. It's just ignorantly racist, I guess.
Yeah, they're not really. They don't care that what they're saying is
Racist and
So
yeah, Marty's got this drinking problem, and is it? And they've got the dog at this point. Billy and Hans, they've got the dog.
yeah, they've got Bonnie the Shih Tzu.
Yeah, with
Yeah, he's like holding. Yeah, she's staying at Billy's house actually.
yeah, with a great the collar. They've got like a thing on the You know how
Oh yeah,
there's numbers on
the engraving on
the
the collar.
engraving of like, because usually that's where you put like the phone number to contact if you find
Yeah,
missing dog. What does it say? It says something like,
like
I gotta.
something like return this dog to me or I'll fucking kill you or something
I
along
think
those
yeah,
lines.
it's something like that. I think it says like a specific. It says something like that, and this dog is sort of very much a major part.
It's the MacGuffin of the film.
Yeah. So it says here, Bonnie 323-555-0163. Return to Charles Costello or you will fucking die. That's
The
so
point
good.
across.
It very much gets the point across and immediately illustrates the character.
Yeah.
It's so good. And this
Um,
film, sort of again like in Bruges, has got some really great bits of comedy in it.
I love the bit. This is before that whole
Mm.
party scene where they talk about the Quaker, where Sam Rockwell's just dressing himself in the mirror,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and talking to the dog.
Yeah.
There's great. It was like paw, paw,
Yeah.
no paw. That's okay too.
And this is very much like a sort of a throwaway bit
Yeah,
that
it's
you
one of
would
those
be
things that
like,
say
oh, it's just like sort of him trying to get to know this dog, but that's it. It doesn't like you would
yeah, but then
think this
it's
doesn't matter.
nice little payoff later.
Yeah, and I will say, I unless I missed it, there isn't a bit where shooting someone in the eye that doesn't come back later, right? That wasn't a thing I missed at all.
Yeah, no, that doesn't come.
Yeah, I thought this. Well, that was happening. I thought that's so. I felt like, oh, that's gonna come back later in like the third act or something. That's just gonna happen.
Oh yeah, like
Because I just sort of have that way of like, okay, well, sort of look at these sorts of things that are established early on, and I sort of assume it will come back, even though it might not. It's just sort of
yeah, it seems like the sort of thing that in like this to have
yeah,
one of Sam Rockwell shoot a guy through the eye, and then Woody Harrelson be like, "Holy shit, dude, you shot a guy through the eye."
yeah, and like that's pretty
That would-
impressive, you know.
yeah,
Yeah,
that takes skill or just luck. But yeah, that
yeah.
would be cool actually.
Uh,
Um,
so
Billy is intent on helping Marty write his screenplay.
he wants credit. He wants to be like credited in it.
But yeah, he just wants to help him
He just,
write it
yeah,
basically.
and yeah, because of the Jack of
He doesn't see
Diamonds.
he doesn't seem that bothered about. Oh yeah, they said he
Yeah,
can.
but
Actually no, yeah, he's not that bothered about credit.
yeah,
He just kind of says like, "Hey, you let me, you write it, then that's fair."
but there is a character who does want credit on it, and
Oh yes, oh, yeah.
because there's a bit
So
where they put
Billy
a
puts an ad in the newspaper.
yeah in the newspaper for psychopaths essentially.
Calling all psychopaths.
Yeah, and so they meet one of these psychopaths with the bunny rabbit.
Not quite yet.
Oh, well, they put the ad in the paper then.
Put the ad in the paper.
And then a little bit.
Billy leaves the little dog warehouse where
Yeah, and so
dogs.
Hans and Marty
Hans
and
is captured by the uh
Charlie.
gangsters, Charlie's men.
Yeah, as he's
Professorson.
yes, because he's dropping off another dog, right? He's at someone else's house, and then they capture him, like as he's going to his car to leave.
As he's and so that he takes them to the dog warehouse, and that's where
And
Marty
where
and
Marty
Hans
is.
meet.
And they're just sort of a bit of a standoff, and because Marty's not really about this sort of
Exactly, he has no idea what's going on. Some men with guns just show up.
yeah, and so it's Professorson and another guy, one of Charlie's other guys.
I want to talk about Christopher Walken in this bit because there's a little line that he delivers that I really like.
Yeah.
So I love Christopher Walken in general.
I think
I think he's a great actor. Yeah, no, most people like Christopher Walken.
Yeah.
Really funny here.
Yeah.
Just the way I mean, this is typical of most of his performances, but the way he delivers lines.
Mm-hmm.
The bit where Marty's gonna say like, where the Shih Tzu is or whatever, and Hans tells him, "Have some pride in yourself. Have some faith in Jesus Christ as your Lord, and don't tell these scum-sucking motherfuckers nothing." Just his intonation.
Yeah. That's sort of the thing that sort of work with certain actors. Nicolas Cage is another one where just the way he like delivers
He delivers
lines
lines. Yeah.
is like why they're funny. It's not the
Because
lines aren't
Christopher
necessarily.
Walken's got such an iconic voice.
Yeah, it's not sort of the like words he's
They're able to
saying.
use that yeah, this is the way he's
Yeah, it's not.
yeah, yeah, that line isn't particularly funny, but just, the way he says, have some pride
Yeah,
in
it's
yourself.
yeah,
Faith
and
in
that's why.
Jesus Christ is your Lord.
Yeah,
Um, so then the Jack of Diamonds shows up and shoots the goons.
immediately kills them. Just headshot instantly.
So this is the bit of the film that this is kind of where one of my kind of annoyances lie.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I guess spoiler, it's revealed that Billy.
Is the Jack of Diamonds.
So this bit, where did he go? Does he just carry around his Jack of Diamonds get up?
Well,
Did he see those guys show up? Did he run into the back and get changed and then come back in and?
I don't know. Well, because he left.
He leaves.
Did he say where he was leaving again?
He just said he was leaving because he saw that Marty was reading the magazine that he put the article in.
And then he
And then the guys show up.
Then he comes back.
So it's not really clear what.
Yeah. And I thought like sort of. I guess sort of the way it was made, sort of the Jack of Diamonds and the Quaker was sort of. I mean, I guess that's sort of the point is that they're meant to be in a story. Like it looks like it's sort of they're not real. I mean, that is the point. Is that this is.
I mean, the Jack of Diamonds is a real, and so is the Quaker. But...
Yeah, but I think it's because of how they're introduced. Because they're telling stories. The Quaker is introduced as like a story.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I sort of thought, okay, this was just sort of an idea they had, but it's sort of revealed a bit later that like it's a real person. And so then the Jack of Diamonds then leaves.
So Hans and Marty go back to Billy's house and tell him what happened.
Yeah, and so that's sort of what they're doing, and then I think it's around here that Billy is at Charlie's house, if I recall correctly.
That comes. We're introduced to the rabbit around this point. Actually, no. This is around. So yeah, Hans goes off to see his wife.
Oh yes, and
Charlie's tracked her down,
and he basically interrogate. Well, he basically says.
He asks where Myra, Kislowski or what is.
Yeah.
She says that she's in surgery, even though she's trying to kind of protect herself here until she knows what this guy's deal is.
Yeah.
And then he figures out that it's her. It's her.
And throughout most of the scene, Woody Harrelson is just on a wheelchair, just like spinning
around in a wheelchair.
Yeah, and I was like, that's just really funny, isn't it? Just the way.
Yeah, it's a nice. But yeah, I like doing.
He's doing spins and he's
on wheelies.
And then sort of as it gets serious and it gets to the end, he like gets up and is gonna deal with this properly. And earlier on, when he's interrogating the woman who lost his dog. We think he's gonna kill her, but he shoots like just next to her. Cause
and his gun
jams as well, which he tries shooting.
Yeah, no, he was good in this.
Yeah, and his gun jams, but he doesn't want to change it because he likes the handle, the stock. He likes
weird, little pedantic little detail.
Yeah, and so then that's that, and so he kills Myra, and he's leaving just as Hans is arriving.
I always love little bits where a character kind of assesses the situation in a couple of seconds and realizes that something's up. So instead of walking into his wife's room, Hans just continues down the corridor and out the other end.
Yeah.
Or going back.
Yeah.
He sees the guy with the gun.
Yeah. But he does get into the room, and that is a lot of blood. Like.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of blood in the human body.
Yeah. And it's just like over the walls and the windows and everything, and Hans is just sort of sitting there, just holding Myra in his arms. Sort of disregard for the blood getting all over his clothes and everything.
Well, you know, their wife.
Yeah, and so then he leaves after spending
Yeah.
some time with his wife, and there's a sort
Freaks
of
out Woody Harrelson a bit.
yeah, and they're sort of sitting in like the waiting room, and Woody Harrelson points out that this is where you need to get like a cleanup there, and also Hans has got like a cut above his head because he was hit in the head earlier.
Oh right, yeah. He's hit
And
by one of the goons.
he's like, "Do you need to get cleaned up, or like do you need help?"
He's like, yeah, it's like, are you hurt? He's like, oh.
No. And then he pulls off his cravat, and he offers it to him, and it's at this point where we sort of figure out that he was the Quaker because he's got the giant scar across his neck.
I think this is meant to be the point of realization.
Mm.
Yeah, if you put the pieces together, you're like, oh, it's him. But so then, I forget that they're all together at like this restaurant before any of this stuff happens, talking about what they're gonna do. And Sam Rockwell's like, hey, we could go have a shootout in the desert. And
Yeah.
what are we gonna do in real life?
Yeah, and then they're talking about sort of things and
calling the cops and like, oh, cops, fuck them.
Yeah, and there's lots of I sort of don't have I know scenes that happen, but I can't exactly remember where they go exactly. There's ones where they're talking about different psychopaths, like there's a Vietnamese psychopath that they're talking about.
Be a con guy.
Yeah, and which is one of my sort of favorite bits, and it gets some really good lines out of it.
Yeah, and the way it develops into something else.
Yeah.
Really nice. So then Billy and they arrive back at Billy's house and see Tom Waits sitting with a rabbit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like Billy's interrogation tech.
Mm.
A voicemail saying that you're gonna kill me or whatever.
Yeah.
And then he's just like, okay, yeah, you seem normal.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's also around at this point where is Billy is at Charlie's house, I think.
Yeah, so Marty is interviewing Tom Waits and stuff. Yeah, so yeah, before we go into Sam Rockwell's, but yeah, so he's telling him Tom Waits, Zachariah, I think.
Yeah, Zachariah.
Telling him about his, I think it's his wife, and how they used to go around the country killing people. And
then it gets to the bit where they burn that guy in his house with rabbits. But it's sort of at this point that it sort of seems that he kind of thinks they've gone a bit far. He's sort of a bit like
he's kind of like, okay, this is going a bit too.
And so he wants his.
So they separate, and then in exchange for using his story, Zachariah, he can put a message at the end of the film.
Yeah, to his wife. Former wife, yeah.
Maggie, that's it.
Yeah. Which.
Then
you know.
We'll get to. Then Billy's off at Charlie's house.
Yeah, and they're talking, and they're going to like get it on, but it doesn't.
Billy can't get an erection.
Yeah, and because he's worried about chlamydia and such.
Funny, I thought like chlamydia or something.
Not AIDS.
I love how he says that like it's on the couch.
Like
honey, I thought like chlamydia.
Like that's better than AIDS.
Well, I guess it kind of is, but
yeah,
it's not as lethal, but it's still not great.
It's not great. You don't want it anyway. Whether it's better or not is besides the point. And
I think there's a really great establishing moment of the relationship here because Billy's trying to get on with Olga Kurilenko, Angela, and then as the camera's panning across, you see a photo of Charlie and his dog. So okay, this is his girlfriend.
Yeah.
I also love that as he's going through this scene and he's eating his Cheetos.
Yeah.
Billy's just casually wiping his hands in her hair. Like sitting on the couch, it's like he's stroking her head, and he's actually just wiping the dust off his
I didn't catch that. I missed that bit. I see what's happening. Um,
Then
but
he tells her about kidnapping Bonnie, the dog.
yeah,
He has to give
and
it back. He's like, no,
then
we can't give back a kidnapped dog.
that's
It's the whole object of the kidnapping.
yeah, and so he tells her to call Charlie, and then he kills her.
Actually, no, yeah, she calls Charlie of her own accord, I think.
Yeah,
And then he gets a call from Hans, who's now back with Marty, and tells him, like, Myra's dead, unfortunately.
yeah,
I love the reaction with Farrell when he is, and Hans tells him that, like, oh yeah, the results came back, she was clear, she was going to live. Marty just gives like a little satisfied, like a little nod. Sick.
yeah,
Yeah, and then he tells her that I was dead. So naturally, he shoots Charlie's girlfriend in the stomach.
yeah, and then he leaves, and Charlie and his
Yeah, he puts a card in her hand that's revealed. Oh, Billy is the Jack of Diamonds.
Jack of Diamonds, and they come to back, and they go through like a thing of playing cards, and notice that all the like 100.
Billy gets back to his house, gets Marty, Hans, and the dog, and get out of there just as Charlie,
Yeah.
right hand man, follow. This is the guy that was the Canadian in Rouge.
Oh, right. Oh, that's right. Yeah, because you mentioned that he's in all
Martin
of
McDonagh's buddy, and he pops up in all of them.
and so he'll be somewhere in Three Billboards.
Yes.
Yeah. And so they're sort of leaving, and they head out to the desert.
Well, yeah, they stop in like a bar first.
Yes, they stop there first.
That's when Marty tells Hans about the story of the Quaker, who then reveals that he was the Quaker.
Yeah, and then Billy sort of took his story, I guess, is how you would put it.
Yeah, he borrowed his story.
He heard the story and sort of told it as his own. It was a story he came up with.
And then, yeah, I like the hypocrisy there because Billy gets annoyed at Marty for kind of like taking his story as if it was his.
Yeah,
when
and
Billy did the exact same thing.
Yeah, the exact same thing.
But then they're heading out to the desert, and Marty asks Hans if he wants to help write his movie.
Yeah, and so
he's also asked Billy if he wants to help write the movie at this point.
Yeah,
I just realised we've skipped over a little scene that I really love. That's the bit where Marty he reads Billy's diary. Talking about don't set fire to the neighbor's flag.
and we see later on there's a half-burnt American flag.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really nice character bit for.
Yeah.
Also, just the visuals. Then, like he's driving home and he casually eating like a Mars bar or something he left in the glove box after shooting a woman.
Yeah. He's just going. Yeah, he's just eating, and because he's got a gun there in the glove box, and
Yep.
It's sort of like, oh, is he going to grab it? And no, he just grabs the Mars bar. And
the chocolate.
Yeah.
But yeah, then they're driving out to the desert, and Marty gets Billy and Hans involved to help write the movie.
Yeah.
They talk about Gandhi. My friend, I leaves the whole world blind. I believe that wholeheartedly.
No, it doesn't. There's only one guy left with one eye.
How's the last blind guy gonna take out the eye of the last guy left who's still got one eye?
Yeah. And
I remember when I first watched this film, I'd had that thought like a couple of days before. Then I watched this film and was like, crap, now it's not going to seem like an original thought because this movie said it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's sort of how it works, Any thought is probably not original because someone's thought it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, then they arrive out in the desert.
And so Hans has been reading Marty's script and comments on how poorly the women characters.
Oh, women characters are awful.
Yeah, he says, I got this
Most
thing.
of them are either shot or stabbed to death within 5 minutes. Those that don't probably will later on.
And then Marty says, well, it's a hard world for women. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, it's a hard world for women, but most of the
ones I know can string together a sentence.
And I feel like that's just a comment on screenwriting, sort of just in general.
So much of this film is kind of Hollywood about violence and certain things portrayed.
and how
Mm.
like it seems like not in every movie, of course, but in a lot they just can't
In a
write
lot, yeah.
women characters.
Christopher Nolan. Uh,
Oh, that so what's weird is how often Christopher Nolan has come up on this show and just I don't want to say contempt because that seems harsh, but well, I mean it is kind of problems with his writing, particularly for characters, and I think like not that he's a bad writer, but that he just really can't write well
he
women.
struggles with certain things.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of a thing. That's sort of something that's pointed out that like he can't write women. He's trying to do like a nice thing for women. Like his intentions are good. That's well, kind of good, but just the way he's doing it isn't good. It's sort of how people try to be like, oh, representation for women, but they don't actually do it. It's like this woman's character is that she's a woman, you know.
I was gonna say, yeah, they're there because she's women.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that not all screenwriters, of course, but like a lot do. Like a lot of sort of bigger writers, directors have that problem where they just cannot write women characters, even though it's not really that hard.
This is something that Martin McDonagh really kind of took on board himself because he wrote this film and then kind of thought, okay, my past two have been very male driven. So when he wrote Three Billboards, he kind of thought, okay, I'm going to make this, strong female lead character.
Yeah, and Frances McDormand is the main character of that story.
The strong independent.
Yeah. And so it's also around this point I'm pretty sure that Marty's talking about, well, because Billy's like talking about shootouts and stuff, and Marty's like, no shootouts, and Billy's just
he has this idea of like how about the characters just seems like the perfect setup for this perfect revenge film. And the characters just drive out to the desert and talk for the rest of the film.
And I was just thinking, this is kind of similar to Adaptation. That scene in Adaptation.
Oh yeah,
Nicolas Cage is talking with Brian Cox about, what if we just have characters that just sort of they don't change and there's sort of none of this and they don't, it's sort of like that sort of thing of like, well, actually, it's not. You're wrong. Like, because that's not how people work, and and like you can try and do that story of just people just talking, but it's hard to do that. You kind of need to something else.
Yeah, this film is very meta. To the point that the main character is an Irishman who is a screenwriter called Marty. Martin McDonagh is an Irish-born screenwriter.
Yeah.
Kind of a author surrogate.
Yeah. So
I really like the way that Hans and Marty form a friendship in this film.
Yeah.
He kind of helps him with his screenplay, and Marty's always kind of a bit protective of him.
Yeah. And that sort of comes back later on at the end of the film as well, but we'll get to that point later on.
So then I think around this point we get to one of my favourite scenes in the film. In fact, it might be my favourite scene.
Oh, is it the scene with Billy talking about the
shootout? Yeah!
It's such a good scene, and because the way he's just like explaining it, but you can tell that like Marty and Hans are like, "What are you doing?"
It's full of shit. What are you doing? Yeah, exactly. This isn't particularly well thought out.
And it's so good.
I love the fact that Billy had something written down on that paper. And then Marty points out the fact that, like, hang on, why would Jack of Diamonds know that this guy is going to show up unarmed? Obviously, he isn't.
Yeah.
So then Billy has to rethink everything, and everything he's doing there, he's just improvising.
And so he's like, because then he was expecting a double cross, because he just happens to have brought a couple of friends along,
and then every fucking grave burst the seventh psychopath.
Flamethrower, who's that? The Viet Cong guy who was hiding up a tree.
Yeah, I love this line of on just so kind of perfectly redundant, and I love that. Like, it's the Viet Cong guy, he was hiding up a tree.
And then he points out that Marty's there, but he's just, observing, and that's alright.
It's okay.
Nobody thinks you're a pussy.
And then I love the fact that in his pitch is that it's going to start raining when Kaya shows up. You can see her boobs through her shirt.
I was like, okay. I was watching that. I was like, that's the point. It's like, Because usually that would just be like, oh, they're just doing that for the sake of it. But this is the point: is that Billy's doing this.
That's the point that she shows up. So
yeah, and also then she gets killed immediately.
Fucking idiot! It's Kaya. It's fucking mown down. Fucking mown down.
And she's like, and and I like how he makes her apologize, and like if she comes back to say that she's sorry and she loves you.
Sorry for being such a fucking bitch.
And then she's mown down. Her head almost comes off, and then her head does come off. And then it's like and then Martin is like Marty throws away the notepad and he just starts shooting.
He kicks over a grave.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really gross. And let the animals die in the just the women.
Yeah. And he's like, because you can't let the animals die in the movie. Just the women.
Just the women.
And then the Viet Cong, he goes here and he dies, and he never even had a fucking name, and he's so good.
He takes his nunchucks and he kills two of the best.
Nunchucks are Japanese. And he just ignores it and just continues on. Because he doesn't care. Because again, it's not like it doesn't hate them, but he just is racist because.
Oh yeah, no, it's like the bit with the Viet Cong guy hiding in a tree,
Yeah.
The stereotype of the Viet Cong.
And so it's like, the only ones left are you and Hans, and pieces for quiz, because again, that's just how he is.
This guy's a bastard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jack Diamonds wasn't actually dead. He had a crossbow was
a bit injured.
He was just a bit injured.
He was just a bit injured. And then, it goes like through.
That's not enough, so he pulls out a shotgun.
And then.
Bye.
And then
so I'm.
That's alright.
I was gonna say, mentioned last week that McDonagh every now and then he has like a real kind of directorial flourish, and I think that flourish in this film is in this scene. So I think it is very differently directed to the way the rest of the film
it's
done in
like
a more
frantic.
stereotypical action.
It's a lot more frantic, and
it's done to look really kind of like epic and
it's got the sort of effects and the rain and the grey.
Yeah, it's done to look a lot more Hollywood.
Yeah, which is the point because it's a pitch.
Yeah, exactly.
And I like how at the end we pan over the blood-stained cemetery and off into the pretty blue skies of dawn, and he's just explaining how there's peace and how the skies are
maybe
blue.
One day there can be beautiful troubled world. That would be good.
Yeah, and then it just cuts to Hans and Marty just being like,
but when he's like acting out thing, he's like Jack and dying. He knocks over like a can of Coke or something in the background, and starts spilling all over like the suitcase. I'm like, oh damn, that's gonna be sticky as shit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's probably my favorite scene of the whole film. Was just his pitch and him explaining how this final shootout is gonna happen.
Sam Rockwell's one of my favorite actors. This is a perfect vehicle for his talents. Just balls to the wall enthusiasm. And
actor, just like in general.
He's not my favorite actor. Full stop. He's one of them.
Oh, one of them, yeah. But this is very much. I haven't really seen Sam Rockwell and stuff. I think the only other thing I can think of that I've seen him in is Iron Man 2, which is not a good showcase of his acting abilities. And I knew he was a big deal. He was Oscar winner and nominated as well, and he's like
well, actually no, he only got his first Oscar nomination, and for that matter,
for 3 Billboards.
Yeah,
which we'll get into
next week.
Yeah. So
I like it. It's got layers.
Yeah.
Then Hans and Marty figure out that. Well, I say figure out. They see in a newspaper that Billy is wanted in suspicion of killing Angela and being the Jack and Diamonds killer.
Yeah. And so they come back to the cab and it's on fire.
Get high on peyote.
High on peyote, yeah.
And then Hans wanders off.
Yeah.
And then when Marty goes to get him, Billy blows up the car.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that bit where they run back and they see the car on fire. Then Sam Rockwell just pokes his head out the tent with the dog.
Yeah, and it explodes. And I was at that moment, I was like, "Oh no, did they just kill Sam Rockwell?" And it just comes out of the tent with the dog. I'm like, "Oh,
hi."
He's all right.
Another one of my favorite lines from Christopher Walken. Psychopaths, they get kind of tiresome after a while, don't you think?
Yeah. And
Um,
and so also Billy sort of explains his plan, and the car is on fire, and he explains that he's called Charlie out to come with to them, but you know he did promise to come alone and unarmed, and he said he would.
Yeah.
He'll be here on time.
And Billy's expecting the shootout.
Depending on traffic. Yeah.
Yeah, the next morning, and Billy, they're looking at like, what is it, a gerbil?
Yeah.
They all kind of have a falling out.
Yeah. And
Billy calls Marty an alcoholic fucking bastard.
Yeah. Which he's not massively off.
I say that's not incorrect.
And so Hans...
I think you better stop drinking, Martin, is how you leave.
And Hans, then at this point, he leaves.
He mentions that when he was high on peyote, he saw Myra saying that there was no afterlife, so Billy kind of bullshit saying, oh yeah, that was just me.
Yeah.
He doesn't want Hans to have a midlife crisis and lose his faith. So he manages to guess accurately what she said.
Yeah.
So Hans leaves. Well, I love actually. There's a great bit in the previous scene where it says, it's like, Marty asks him like, "What are you gonna fight?" And he says, "No, I'm not gonna run. What you gonna do? I'm gonna die."
Yeah. Also, there's a really great line around this point. I think it's around this point where Marty says, "This guy just telephoned a psycho killer to come down and
psycho kill us." Yeah. It was when he's getting all angry about it. And this guy freaked out after eating some psychedelic cat.
Yeah. And so
doubting a lifelong belief in the afterlife.
Yeah.
But yeah, Hans buggers off.
And so we're just left with Billy and Marty and the dog, Bonnie. And so they're just waiting for Charlie to arrive. And he arrives.
They're saying it's like kind of like that window of time, ED clinic, waiting for the doctor to come out and say, "Billy, you're good to go."
Yeah.
Or, "Billy, you got VD."
Yeah.
Or chlamydia or whatever.
I think it's chlamydia. I think he does say it was chlamydia because he was thinking.
He does add on to the end, or chlamydia.
Or chlamydia. I was like, because he was just thinking about that.
So Charlie arrives.
They're shocked because he actually did come alone, and Billy's like, "This isn't right." Like,
so it's like, he's convinced that he's not alone.
Yeah, and so then he gets out of the car and they're like, "Hey, show us that you've got no guns," and
turns around,
and then he shoots him.
Billy shoots him.
Marty's like, "You shot him in the back." He's like, "Of course I shot him in the back."
I was aiming for the spine.
Yeah. And then he walks over and he just starts panicking him down, just completely doesn't care that he's, shot and bleeding out.
He's like, can I just give Barney a couple? Oh, you can give Barney a couple of kisses and a couple of scratches.
and he grabs the car and he finds a flare gun. And he's like, oh.
Before this point, Hans has arrived back at they're in some national park. I think.
Yeah, and it's like
Hans has arrived
at a police station. It looks like a sort of police station as with Charlie's.
It's the entrance to this park.
National park that they're at, and Hans is there as the guys with Charlie's guys waiting.
They see him.
Put
his hands up,
and they're talking. And I think it's interesting that they are doing this. And there's police officers, relatively close by,
Yeah. It's kind of like a win.
Yeah. And so, they're like, oh, he doesn't have a gun, and...
This is another case of this film kind of deconstructing some archetypes with the whole, put your hands up, no.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, what if somebody didn't put their hand up?
Yeah.
What about that?
And so, they're like, and the guy's like, alright, I like you. It's all good. And he goes to leave because...
So, he sees the police there, so he makes it look like he's going for a gun. So, Paulo shoots him and draws the attention of the cops.
And he dies, and they're like...
Actually, no, because it's around this point that, Marty is...
Is it the flare gun's fire.
Yeah, it cuts between the two things. So yeah,
Yeah, but
after the whole "put your hands up" no bit, then yeah, we're back with them.
yeah,
Marty
and then
puts
Marty puts Charlie in the car and then starts
supposed to take him to hospital,
driving him.
leaving Billy with this flare gun that he's got.
Yeah,
He
and
finally
Marty.
clicks it,
Yeah,
realizes it's there to kind of show them where they are. So he fires it in the air.
yeah.
That's when the whole Hans makes it look he's going for a gun, so
He gets.
um gets shot. So the police know that something's up.
Yeah,
Um,
and then we see that he's
he
holding
dies.
a tape
Yeah, he's got a
recorder.
tape recorder. Yeah, for like
Yeah.
Marty.
And also, it's as we're cutting as well with Marty and Charlie. Marty talks about how he doesn't believe in guns and how he's like, he's a pacifist.
He's a pacifist.
He's a pacifist. And Charlie's got a great line. He's like, "What? You don't believe in guns? They're not like a leprechaun or something. It's just."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he's driving to get him back, but he gets they meet halfway with Charlie's guys.
Charlie reveals that Billy only like gave him a flesh wound when he shot him.
And they get out, and then Marty, is rightly pissed, and he's very
Because
upset.
they mentioned that they've killed Hans.
Yeah, and he's very upset and he's pissed, and Charlie's trying to explain to him like, hey, you're still alive, like it's not any sort of.
You've only had one friend killed. There's
Yeah,
like two friends. I've had three.
Yeah, like that makes it any better for him.
Yeah, and that's kind of a perfect show that Marty's upset with friends dead, and he doesn't really give a crap that most of his guys are dead.
Yeah, and so then
drive. Oh yeah, but there's a line early on where they drive past this giant pile of rocks or whatever, and he really mentions that would be the perfect place for a final shootout.
Yeah.
And this, we get a final shootout between Billy,
and so Billy's
Charlie's men.
A rock with Bonnie, and
he takes out most of the guys at this point. Now it's just Marty, Charlie, Paulo, and him left.
Car, which kills, so it's just Charlie and Paulo.
Charlie and Paulo.
And it's those two, and then there's Billy and Marty and
Marty.
And I like how Billy's. He's like shooting. He's got a gun in his hand, and he's got the other in his mouth, like you would a knife.
Yeah.
And he's.
Yeah. While double shooting. Yeah. And I love how Bonnie's just casually just sitting there.
Yeah, the dog and stuff. I feel like a regular dog would probably be a little more.
Freak the shit out, but
like.
But I guess maybe she's been present for a lot of.
I feel like Charlie, because of Charlie's sort of care for his dog, that she's probably been around some stuff before.
Yeah, she's probably low.
And so then he has to throw the guns out.
There's 2 guns away.
And then he's like,
three guns.
3 guns. Like, throw out your third gun. He's like, I don't have. Does he say I don't have a third gun?
He says, "No, I saw you got 3 guns.
And then he
you want smart cheese?"
And he's like, delaying. He's sort of buying time. And
he's stalling so he can reload the flare gun.
And he comes out with the flare gun to Bonnie's head. And he's like, "Oh, you didn't think about this gun?"
Yeah, like I thought flare gun.
Yeah, and so it's a standoff between
Charlie, Paulo,
and Paul, and
Paul's got a gun on him as well.
Yeah, and Marty is just sort of away from this. He's just there looking at this. And is at this point, does he punch him at this point, or is that Marty punches Billy?
Oh yeah, that's way early.
Oh shit! Fuck.
That's when he's about the psycho killer coming down.
Oh yeah. So we get the standoff, the Mexican standoff. You could argue.
Oh yeah, no, totally. The payoff of the gun jamming.
Yeah, the gun jamming, and he starts doing Billy starts doing the countdown. He's like 5, 4, and then Charlie's gun jams, and he's like, "Oh, can you start again at 5?" And he's like, "No."
At the shootout. At the standoff. At the fucking standoff.
And then he does restart the count. And Marty also has gone in the car. He's driving on.
And Marty's been allowed to go free. And there's a great little bit where he's trying to get his gun to work again. Charlie says to Paul, he's like, "Shoot him while he's not looking," and he's just like, "Obviously, I'm
Yeah.
Would I not be looking?
Yeah.
So just as the police arrive, Charlie's gun works again, and he shoots Billy through the head.
Yeah. And he
Um,
falls.
as he lays
And he
dying.
goes down. And I honestly thought, I guess, I thought like, oh, that would be like an instant kill, but I guess it sort of depends on the.
Depends on the part of the head that you get shot.
Yeah. I mean, you're still gonna die either way. It just sort of depends if one's like an immediate death,
Yeah,
or
no, it
one's
depends
like
how
a.
quickly it is. I mean,
And so he's like
I
lying.
saw on the news the other day that somebody survived getting shot through the head.
Really? That's.
Yeah.
I feel like I've heard about that. I feel like I've heard people who have gotten like shot, but have like survived because of like shot and sort of
Some
an area that
medical
you would
thing I
assume
don't
is fatal, but in reality is like not that bad. It's like,
part of the head.
and it also I guess depends on the gun as well, like how
Yeah.
powerful the gun is. And so he's sort of lying there dying, like just as the police arrive, and he sort of like holds his hand out
It's off.
and paw, and
Does
then
it just
Bonnie
paw in
puts
his
the
hand?
paw in his hand, and they're just sort of looking at each other, and Charlie is sort of
It's arrested.
arrested and looks pretty sad too because his dog.
Because he tries to call Bonnie over, but she's not doing it.
Yeah, and Billy's got his hand out as well, so it's.
I guess now that we at this point in the film and he's died.
Yeah.
I think I'll talk about why I like Billy Bickle so much.
Oh yeah.
So he's a classic case of a charismatic psychopath. He kills people
Yeah.
for the sake of kind of inspiring Marty to write his film. But I think that's what I like about him so much. The fact that he's willing to do this just so his friend can
Yeah.
write a good movie.
He's a good friend, but he's doing like very.
Very bad things in the name of friendship.
Yeah.
And also the fact I love how kind of he expects life to play out like a movie. He's like Abed.
That's another. He's basically like Arbet, except. Yeah. I mean, he's not the same as Arbet.
Abed's aware that he's not in.
Yeah.
Whereas Billy kind of wants life to play
Although
out
to
that
be
way.
fair, I think sort of Arbet. I mean, there's many differences, but Arbet also is one who sort of points out logical inconsistencies and problems, like in horror fiction and Seven Spooky Steps. His pitch is very much like the most logical way of doing it, while Billy's pitch is kind of the opposite of that. Like it's very much like
He's the less intelligent kind.
Yeah,
kind of doing what he thinks will make the most entertaining movie.
Yeah. And Arbet sort of does what he thinks would be entertaining, but in reality, it's kind of the opposite because he
normal person.
It's the like, well, this is what I would do in this situation and what they should be doing, but like it's not. It doesn't work.
Realistically,
But
that doesn't make for interesting entertainment.
Yeah, and that's why Billy's story is so funny because it's the most like balls to the wall, just
Ludicrous
pitch. But like it would be fun to watch, and I would like to watch that film because it would just be the most insane thing. It'd be absolutely mental, but it's not. But sometimes you need that. Like not every film needs to be like a serious like drama that just is like makes perfect sense. Like sometimes you want something that's just ridiculous and just objectively makes no sense.
I'm a big.
Yeah. And so Marty leaving.
Back.
He finishes. Well, actually, he finds
the body of Hans,
and he walks over to his dead body and sort of subtly takes the tape recorder, and he does it in a way where people don't just think he's robbing a dead man. Like
he mentions to the cops that Hans is his friend.
Yeah, because they're trying to block him and like, let him through, but then he's like, "Oh, he's my friend." But like, it is weird that they just sort of let him through. Like, couldn't anybody?
I say no, they probably wouldn't let him do that.
Yeah, in reality, be like,
stand back to that, please.
It's sort of like in the first Spider-Man where Peter sees Uncle Ben and he just sort of is allowed to get through because it's his uncle, and it's like, well, in reality, that probably wouldn't happen.
So anyone can say it's their uncle.
Yeah, and so he then listens to the tape recording with a really great monologue from Christopher Walken about his sort of
building on previous idea of the Viet Cong
the
guy.
Viet Cong thing. And this is the bit that sort of really illustrated for me the sort of more the introspection aspect of this film, because he's talking about sort of this Viet Cong guy, and he's sort of the sort of Viet Cong psychopath is sort of the thoughts, and how he's choosing how he's sort of looking things he's choosing the light, not the darkness. He's not going to go ahead and because it's sort of there's a few scenes with this Viet Cong guy and how he's using this prostitute as like a bomb, essentially, like he straps bomb to
It's a bomb. Yeah.
but in reality it's not like it's sort of him looking at in sort of the context of the story. He's more like imagine things, because there's the prostitute he sees is just like a woman there as he's dousing himself in oil to burn himself to death, essentially. And
Yeah, there's another one of my favorite moments around where the guy says something in me, and the following line is, "The hooker, she studied Vietnamese."
that's right, yeah. I like how that's just a weird thing. It's like, oh, she knows Vietnamese, which is
Written
like,
in there to explain it. Yeah.
yeah. And so the sort of thing ends, and
The way Hans's pitch develops is that it's
a
I
guy
thought
sort of
a monk, first monk,
mm,
burn himself alive in protest of the Vietnam War.
yeah. And the sort of thing ends, and sort of earlier on they sort of talk about dream sequences, and how they don't really work, and how they're for you know
Some
so
sequences of eggs, I believe it.
yeah. Um, and I like how he finishes off his like tape recording. He's like, "Oh, I don't think they like being called that anymore. I think that nowadays they prefer homos," which is more
A little
PC.
confused, but he's got spirit.
Yeah, like he's at least like, "No, we can't call them that. That's offensive, but we can call them this," which isn't like good necessarily, but it's definitely.
He doesn't say they prefer this. He says think.
I think nowadays they prefer. He doesn't say it's like a fact. He's just like. He's not like they prefer this, he says it.
Like, I think they
I
prefer
think they
homo.
prefer this. And then that's sort of the end, and Marty finishes his story.
Just the script. He's adopted Bonnie.
Yeah. And it sort of ends, he finishes writing up the script, and he prints it, and we see him walking outside.
The idea is that the screenplay for Seven Psychopaths is literally this film that we've just watched.
Yeah. And so he leaves, and presumably to mail it, and the camera
They take it to his producer or whatever.
Yeah, and the camera pans up, and we see the half-burnt American flag, which I didn't know that could happen. I thought there was like a thing where like you couldn't actually burn it because of the material. Like,
no, it's a thing, as in it's like a law.
oh, it's a law. Oh, that's right. Yeah, you can't burn it, but you
you can't let it touch the ground, and you can't burn it.
which is so stupid. Like, I mean, flags in general, just the way people look at flags and how they treat them is like, it's like just some colors. It's like, it's like when people, don't, stand up for the national anthem, or they do anything that is not like pro this or whatever. Like, people lose their minds, and it's like,
Just watched an episode of South Park earlier today about.
oh yeah, well, because South Park very much covers that sort of thing of. And yeah,
that area. Then it seems the film was over.
But then Marty gets a call from Zachariah, is the psychopath,
Rigby.
and he's like, "I saw your film, and there was no special mention in the credits." And he's like, "Oh, sorry, I'll fix it. I'll change it." It's like, "Oh, it's too late for that." And he's like, "I'm gonna come kill you on Tuesday, is it?" He says like on
yeah, Tuesday works for me.
And he says a line too here that he didn't think he would. What, you didn't think I was serious because I carry a rabbit? And then he's like, "I'm gonna find you and I'm gonna shoot you on Tuesday or whatever." And Marge's like, "All right," and he's just like,
anything.
And then Zachariah's just like, "Oh," and he sort of pulls back and is like,
"I'm like, you've been through the ringer."
Yeah, and it's like, you know what? Tuesday doesn't actually work for me.
Yeah. We let him live.
Yeah, and then he hangs up the phone and just picks up his rabbit and he just leaves.
Walks away.
And
And this little bit on the end of the film
mm,
that is the message
mm,
um to at the end of the film.
mm,
Again, being meta, this
yeah,
this is that meta.
mm.
And yeah, the
Like
film.
that's an extra scene that Marty's like, oh, this happened to me. I might just insert an extra
Crap, I
scene.
better add that in.
Yeah. Uh, and yeah, that's pretty much where the film wraps up. I think. Is there anything else we haven't really talked about? I
We've
think
touched on all the important bits.
yeah. I'm just thinking if there's any good like lines or sort of specific moments that I like. I like the bits where Marty and Billy are talking about Marty's partner and how he's like, Billy's like, well, she's not pissed at you for anything for specific, more because she's a fucking bitch.
Yeah.
And I was like, she's not a fucking bitch, Marty. She's just got issues.
Yeah, she's got being a fucking bitch issues.
And it's just like, yeah, it's very much a portraying. Again, it's the sort of thing of like, you know, and there's, yeah, that bit at a certain point where Marty just, he punches Billy. He's like, sorry for hitting you in the face so hard. And it's like, there's like, it was a pretty good punch for a pacifist.
Yeah.
And
At one point, I think Billy says like to Marty, "Are you out of your alcoholic fucking mind?"
yeah, and there's another great line where Marty's talking like about the possibility of heads exploding if they get shot, and then I was like, no, it's possible if their head's made out of explosive, it's possible.
Is
It's
it true that there is a piece in a man's head that if you use it, it will go up?
like... Oh, that's Hot Fuzz, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh goodness. Yeah, because that's such like a thing that, like a stereotype in movies. Someone gets shot in the head and it explodes, and it's not even like big guns. It's just like a pistol. They get shot like a small pistol and their head just goes, and it's just,
Yeah.
and it's just like that does. I highly doubt that's because I've seen footage of like actual people getting shot in the head and it doesn't look like that at all. It's just
Yeah,
like
no, like the start of the Five Bloods or something.
yeah, it's just like there's just some blood that comes out and that's it. Yeah, but if it's like a shotgun, maybe because that's a
Yeah, if
much
it's
more
a big,
powerful.
yeah, or if it's the dim dim.
Didn't it?
I can't remember what it is, but the bit where Marty mentions that he doesn't want any shootouts, and then he just gets.
And
He says,
Bill's
"What are
like,
we making movies now?"
no fucking
Sounds like the
shootouts.
stupidest thing I've ever heard. No shootouts.
Yeah,
No shootouts.
and
Marty's like, no.
no,
He's like,
no.
no.
And yeah, because Marty's like, well, the first half should be, it'll be like the perfect setup for like an out and out revenge flick, violence, guns, all the usual bullshit, and then they just drive out for the desert and they pitch a tent and they just talk for the rest of the friggin' movie, shootouts, no payoffs, just human beings talking, and then Billy's
Why are we
like,
making French movies?
sounds like the stupidest ending. No shootouts. Sounds like the stupidest ending I've ever fucking. No shootouts, and he's
Yeah, he's like, stupidest thing I've ever fucking. No shootout. He gets really,
and
he gets
Marty's
really
like,
upset about it.
and then Marty's like, no, and he's like, no, because Marty's just saying it like, no, like he's very like calm
Like,
about
no,
it. Marty,
like, you don't like that? He's like, no.
no, oh no,
McDonagh's characters really like a good shootout, don't they?
yeah,
Because going back to In Bruges last week, there's a where when they're having that little standoff in the hotel, and Marie the hotel owner is like, "Why can't you just put your guns away and go home?" He's like, "Don't be stupid. This is just shootout.
don't be stupid. That's not how it works. It's just like, yeah,
This is the shootout."
yeah.
Um,
Is there anything else? I think we've touched on the most of
I think
the
we've covered pretty much
and
everything.
also favorite quotes and moments and stuff. So I guess I'll put my rating on it. As I mentioned, I think In Bruges is better, but I still do really quite like this film. I think there's some bits that I would argue are funnier than anything in Bruges, in my opinion. I mean, just the whole Billy's pitch for the final shootout is like such a great scene. Uh, but I think some of the characters I'm like sort of less interested in, and that's just sort of it. And I think I sort of mainly what I have a problem. The characters. I think I mentioned this in Bruges, where I didn't care about many of the characters beyond like the main three, and I sort of have that. I think I prefer more characters here, but I still sort of think like the main like Marty's not as interesting as Ray is in Bruges, and I
No.
guess that's the point. But I think I prefer the characters I like in Bruges. I like more than the characters I like in Seven Psychopaths, even though there's more characters in Seven Psychopaths that I prefer. If that makes sense. It's very long-winded. But still, I'm giving this an 8 out of 10.
It's reasonable.
Mm.
Well, I absolutely love this film.
Mm.
It's another really, really well done piece of work.
Mm-hmm.
I think I do agree with you that this is funnier than In Bruges. I think this
Mm.
is definitely his funniest film, and it's definitely trying to be more of a comedy than the others are.
Well, because I haven't seen Three Billboards, but from what I know, it's probably not that funny, just based on the subject matter.
Um, I think there are definitely some funny moments in it.
But it's
Three
not like
Billboards, but yeah,
a,
no, In Bruges and Three Billboards deal with some very heavy stuff, and therefore, one is open to comedy.
yeah. Whereas this is just more of guys just sort of like hanging
Yeah,
out.
you mean you describe the plots of the films, you can kind of get an idea of it. In Bruges, men struggling with grief after a job goes wrong. Three Billboards, a mother, challenges the local police after her daughter is murdered.
Mm-hmm.
Seven Psychopaths, some guys kidnap a gangster's dog.
And also one of them is writing a screenplay as well. Like it's
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a less heavy film, but yeah, I think this is incredibly entertaining. I love Sam Rockwell. I think
Yeah. Sam
I think
Rockwell is the best part of this
Christopher
film.
Walken as well. He's up there. I think he's great
Oh,
for it.
I'm a big Christopher Walken too. They're probably really
They're the
really
big
good.
performances that I point to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I guess I'm going. Can we do point fives?
You can. I don't. I try to.
Yeah, if you want to round it up, but just
I'll probably yeah. You can give a half. You can give points. I've had
okay.
people
Well,
in the past give like 8.7s or something like that.
wow.
Not even an 8.5. It's like I just do a 9 or an 8 or an 8.5. Like don't just do something like that.
Actually, I do it by
I just do it in increments of 5. I always round up, but it's like I might give something. It might be an 8.5, but I'll just say a 9, just sort of for a rounded number. But if you want, you can. I don't mind.
Yeah, I'm gonna go 9.5 because I do have issues with, but I don't think it's away from what I love about.
Yeah, and you do this the least favorite of Martin McDonagh.
Yeah, to say this is my least favorite of his films, and I'd still give it a 9.
And 9.5 is still a really good score for the weakest film of a filmmaker's
For a
work.
3-film career. Yeah. I do love this.
Yeah. And so, yeah, next week we'll be talking about Three Billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri. Hopefully it's good.
The saga.
The end of the saga, yeah. I hope it's good. Like, I don't know why I wouldn't think it's good. I know my dad saw it recently and he thought it was quite good. So, hopefully I'll like it. And if I don't, at least you'll like it. So we can get some... Because this episode and last week's is just us agreeing. Like, yeah, this is good, isn't it?
No, we need to pick something a bit more polarizing.
Yeah. Well, for future plans, hopefully.
That we do have some.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you for joining me for this week's episode. Yeah. Is there anything we need to say, or is that pretty much it?
It's occurred to me. I usually kind of say where these films rank.
Oh yeah. Yes, that is true. You do that.
So this film, Seven Psychopaths, is it's my 34th.
Oh, just what's it between?
Above The Living Daylights, the film below Groundhog
Oh, that's
Day.
right, yeah. And below
Groundhog Day.
Groundhog Day. Oh, yeah. And In Bruges was like 4th or 5th, right?
Yeah, fourth.
Yeah. So, and is I so Three Billboards I assume is like in between there then.
It's definitely.
Yeah, because it In Bruges is Seventh Night Class is your least favorite, so Three Billboards is going to be in there
All shall
somewhere.
be revealed
Yeah.
next week.
So yeah, thank you for joining me for this one. And yeah, check out the website, check out the social medias. Rate this on Apple or wherever you're listening to. And yeah, I will see you guys all in the next one. Goodbye.
Hello.